Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to this very special 150th Splendid Isolation stream. We've got some really good guests on this evening, and hopefully you'll find what we have to say interesting. As always, I'm going to start us off with a tune. Okay, that should do for that. That was my boomer bit, boys. Don't worry, and lady. So, okay, let's go and do this. Eventually. There we go. Eventually. Should be good.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives need, to wait in heavy harness, on flooded folk and wild. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, you see another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's not that Eden folly, bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his soul's reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humour are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian guys? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall wail, O gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly profit blessed laurel, the easy young God's praise, comes out to set your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with dear but wisdom, the judgment joy appears. Take off the white man's burden through all of endless years.
Okay, that was of course the brilliant Chris Gard. Please go and check out his excellent music channel. Chris is a good patriotic Australian Anglo-Celtic dude, and also a husband and father and all those good things. Welcome to my guests. Because this is our 150th stream, I tried to get some people on today who haven't been on for a while, and I'm happy to say at least 3 of them have come on. So I'd like to welcome Rupert August and Lady Charlotte and Don the Pleb, and also, of course, Adamant as well. How are you going, ladies and gentlemen?
Good. Good to be back. It's been a while indeed.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me on again.
Adamant, how are you going,
as
mate?
always. Yeah, brilliant.
Well, Adamant, of course, is very much a regular with this stream, but then Adamant kind of started this channel with me. So, but I'm really happy to have Lady Charlotte and Rupert and Don on again, because they haven't been on as much as some of the other people that we have on here regularly, although they're all really good people. Rupert, how you been going, mate, lately?
Yeah, not too bad. Just quite a lot going on, so been a bit more scarce than previously, but like I said, good to be back.
I've noticed you've been doing some streams with Apostolic Majesty, who, of course, one of the best historians on YouTube. So that's always cool to see, mate.
That was a little while ago now. I haven't been on in a while. I've been putting most of my energies into trying to resurrect my own channel.
Well, that's good. And obviously, if you could, I'll give you a chance to shill that later on. And if you can send it to me on the Discord, I'll put a link in the description afterwards. Rupert's a bloody good historian, and particularly when you're looking at stuff like Chinese and Japanese history and all that, Rupert knows hugely more than I do about that sort of stuff.
Still very much a novice, I'd say, but thank you anyway.
Nah, man, you're fairly expert on that stuff in terms of Western people, if you don't mind me saying so. But yeah, you are. Lady Charlotte, how are you going? Lady Charlotte also has a very interesting channel. If you're interested, particularly in artistic stuff, I think that would be right, Lady Charlotte.
Yeah, well, I've done a few videos about bits of activism I've done in Melbourne. There was a good one about the Let Women Speak Posey Parker event back in March, which we're still having the fallout from at the moment in Melbourne. That's still dragging on. That was the one that resulted in the banning of the Roman salute in Victoria.
Yeah. Don't dare ask a bus to stop in Victoria.
Just be really careful when you hail a cab in Melbourne, because you could end up in prison or with a huge fine, or both. So yeah, I've done different videos, and my most recent one, I did a little one on Barry Lyndon, which is a Stanley Kubrick film. I'm trying to actually do an analysis video.
Beautiful film.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Almost every scene in that film, Lady Charlotte, is like an 18th century painting.
It is
It's
everything.
a beautiful film.
Every scene's either Gainsborough or Hogarth or Joshua Reynolds. It's beautiful. I ran into some trouble with that. I got a YouTube strike for copyright. So be careful that they're getting much tighter about these things, which makes it harder. to use clips.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do an analysis video on that, and I've got a few things going on, and I'm actually taking part in Millennial this year. I've been invited to take part in Millennial Woes, which is obviously an institution now on the DR. This thing, Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without Millennial.
Yep. We all watch that for sure.
Yeah, I know, it's great. I've watched it for years. So that's nice. So I'm not exactly sure what date and time to be confirmed, but the lineup is now confirmed. So there's quite a few big names in there. So that's nice.
Excellent. Don, how are you going, mate?
Pretty decent. I just spend all my time in real life now. There's some hypothetical possibility I'll make content again, but I've been saying that for 6 months, 2 years, whatever it is. And in the meantime, I just spend all of my time on my little ranch in the middle of nowhere doing ranching things. So,
well, yeah, but you have your ranch, which is kind of cool. I mean, many of us would like to have that sort of situation going on. So I reckon you're doing well there, Don.
Well, I like to think so. It makes me happy, so I keep doing it.
Yeah, and of course it was the 248th birthday of the U.S. Marine Corps.
What are we
couple of weeks ago?
15 days ago today. Yep.
Yeah.
I was. If you are not following me, you probably didn't find me belligerently posting on every social media about it being the 248th birthday of the Marine Corps.
Well, that's all right, man.
If you are following me, you could not possibly have missed it.
No, I did notice it, man, but it was cool. I mean, like the U.S. Marine Corps is like a very old-fashioned institution these days. I mean, 248 years old. I'm just, I don't know. The thing I mostly notice these days, Don, is that 75% of under 20 US males are not fit enough to serve in the armed forces. So maybe they're doing something wrong there, mate. You know.
I mean, not. It's funny because they are guaranteedly the people who would tell all of us to touch grass. But look, jerk off. If you touched grass ever, you probably wouldn't weigh 350 pounds. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true. But yeah, I don't know, mate. Don, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, has got a bad reputation in some parts of the DR, purely from a total misunderstanding of something he once said on a Discord he owned. Don's a very good bloke. And people like Charlemagne and Yiz the Eunuch and all sorts of other people know that Don is a very good man, but some of them, not all of them, but some of them are not brave enough to say so.
Well, I've long ago stopped caring. There are plenty of good things that are done on the internet. There are plenty of good movements that are driven. But if all of this is going to devolve down to a question of any one of us reputation amongst the rest of us, then it matters anyway. That's all drama-filled bullshit.
100%, Don. 100%. And like Don is for anyone who doesn't know, he's a U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran who actually did go and fight. I like Don. He's a good bloke. And like I said, there are some people in a sphere who have totally the wrong idea about him because someone got the wrong idea and then said, "Oh no, Don's a bad bloke," which was absolute bullshit. Don is a good bloke. So
it happens.
It does, mate. It does, but that doesn't mean we should put up with it because we're supposed to be the good guys. So there you go.
I'll leave that one to itself.
Yeah, exactly. Alman, how you going, mate? Hang on, maybe you're busy.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm still here. Just
cool,
muted everything.
What's your opinion, Alman, on what's going on in Ireland at the moment? Just to start us off for this 150th special stream.
that is a mess. It's I'm not really sure exactly, like, piecing the timelines together. It's all been like I'm sure most people have seen the basic outline of the news, but then you've also got this thing where you've got like Conor McGregor, who's been like pushing back on this stuff. He actually went silent
He's the
during
MMA guy, isn't he?
yeah, the MMA.
Yeah.
Like he was a former champion of some description.
Yep.
He actually went silent for 24 hours when that kicked off. I don't know if maybe lawyers warned him or he was worried that he might get done for incitement, because he'd literally been tweeting like "this is war" and stuff like that on Twitter. But he's come back out now and he's basically said, I don't really condone like the rioting, but I understand people's anger. He basically said something along those lines. I'm not sure of the exact quote.
How many of little kids were stabbed by this arsehole moron?
Was it 2 or 3 attempted where he stabbed 2 or 3 children? And then
there were 5 people involved in the incident. There was a creche worker, a lady who actually is very, very, very seriously hurt now. She saved the kid. She threw herself in front of them, tried to defend them. There were 3 children, the creche lady and the subhuman that committed the...
So, and as I understand it, 2 of the kids were killed. And one of them is like a 5-year-old who's still fighting for her life. And that's what caused the riots in Dublin and what have you. And apparently that's a bad thing, because you should just accept little tiny kids being stabbed by immigrants. You don't understand.
You can't look back in anger. Unless it's basketball Americans, then
or unless it's Hamas doing stuff in Israel, and then you can.
Yeah,
but then the whole events in October have shattered that, because they didn't look back in anger, did they? Look back in anger. No, they didn't. That whole narrative's gone now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when that one. I had a particular run-in with someone on Twitter of all places, and when that fellow got shot by the police officer in France, and they had cities with riots in them then, which we talked about on the stream at the time. I can't remember what it was. There was all these white lefties coming out and going like, "Oh, if that was my child, I'd want to see whole cities burn as well." And someone sort of very wittily wrote back to them and said, "Oh, but if it was a white kid, you wouldn't look back in anger." It's But yeah.
Can I just correct something just for accuracy? I don't think, as far as I know, no one is killed. They're all seriously injured. But as far as the 5-year-old is very, very seriously injured, and the creche worker, but they're not at this point dead. So we better just clarify that.
Yeah, fair enough. The usual, but look.
I'm just thinking of YouTube.
I totally agree. All I'm trying to think is, like, why is it that every time white kids are attacked and injured, doesn't matter how little they are, we should not look back in anger?
Well, we know why.
But white privilege knows no age.
White guilt.
Yeah,
You, I, my children, everyone on this stream's children, we all carry white guilt. So that makes it okay.
Well, it's not even just that. So that's kind of a little bit, I don't know, spirity. But in practice, they do have very definite plans that are set in place, like contingency plans for how to deal with, it's like any particular kind of like, I don't know, terrorist attack or something. Like they have specific contingency plans and like messages that are pre-prepared, and they have all the correct people tapped for when this kind of thing happens. So they have like a whole network of people to put in front of cameras, and probably even, if I was being a little bit cynical, some kind of like payment that they offer to people involved, so that they just come out with the standard line that we're all very used to now, which is something along the lines of, he wouldn't want this to cause division. We wouldn't want this to stoke anger. He would just want everyone to...
You can't cause division in a multicultural bullshit, nearly destroyed country. No, you can't possibly have that.
It's not too dissimilar from the we'll send you 100 imams type thing.
Well, that's literally what I'm referring to. Yeah, it's but it's more robust than that. It's bigger than that. There's like a whole plan. set up for
Yeah.
how to deal with these kinds of
They,
incidents.
they have tame imams who will go and stand next to Church of England dudes who support gay marriage and lesbian priests and all the rest of it. They'll all go and stand next to each other and say, "Don't look back in anger." But of course not if Hamas is attacking Israel, because then all of a sudden Israel should be allowed to do whatever it likes, because I don't know. Maybe they're a special race. I don't have any idea about this. You understand, guys? But yeah, apparently they can do whatever they like. But us, as Anglo-Celtic people, or Americans, or Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, anyone basically, we're not allowed to do what we like. We are not allowed to have any self-preference whatsoever. Only Israel can have that, and everybody else, but no white people, obviously, because we're just evil. We've just done so much evil in the world, along with providing 95% of all technological advantages that the world has ever got.
I mean, we did conquer everyone, but that was a good thing, and we're doing it again at some point, hopefully.
Yep, I totally agree, Alan. Totally agree, man.
Yeah, but but the next time we're not going to be so nice like we were the first time.
Mitch, well done, sir. I just hope you're right, but I don't think you will. I don't think you will be much nastier anyway. But yeah. Honestly, exactly, mate, exactly. But no, we're just in such a ridiculous situation in our own nations, where we're being obviously replaced by mass third-world immigration. But we're not allowed to say so, because if we do, that makes us evil racists. It's just so...
Well, the bit that gets me a bit Ireland is like Morgoth put it best when he said they boiled the frog too quickly in Ireland, because it's only like the last 30 years they've done it, whereas with us, they've boiled us over the past 70 years.
Ireland, because I was living there then, Ireland became what they called a net migration state in 1996, and that's when they were fully immersed in the EU completely, and that's when they had to pay the price for all the new roads and all the infrastructure projects and start really ramping up the migration. So you're really talking from 1996 onwards, and it's just gone off the cliff. It's literally... I went back there. I was there last in the summer of 2019, and I honestly did not know the place.
Yeah, Ireland's but yeah, I mean, it is a case, like you said, about boiling the frog too quickly. I mean, people say we don't do this here, but we have had this here. You think of like the 2001 Oldham riots, and there was a lot of shit going on through like the 70s. You look at like the huge amount of effort they went through to put like football hooliganism away, because there was enormous amounts of racial elements to that as well.
Yes.
And of course now people look at most football teams, and there are certain commentaries on the right that you can essentially choose from. But
and now all the teams are kneeling before every game. They're literally cucking to black people before every single game they do, and the fans don't turn around and say, "Nah, you do that, I'm not going to support you." They just carry on supporting, and some of them will come out with crap like, when it's the England team, the England national anthem is longer than the kneeling. Oh, get fucked! I'm sorry. Just get fucked.
Yeah.
It's like I saw like I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know if like you caught, because I mean I haven't really commented about this on Twitter because I know I've fed posts too much, but you see always all these shit libs who are just trying to say stuff like, Ireland was founded by immigrants, or Dublin was built by immigrants. And I'm thinking, you do know the immigrants in question were Vikings who spent their time enslaving the native Irish. Hardly model migrants, if you ask me.
Yeah, Dublin, for anyone who doesn't know, started off as a basically Viking slave port. That's how Dublin started. long before the English had anything to do with Ireland, by the way. But yeah, it did.
Welcome to history.
I mean, there is another dimension to all this, though, which is potentially where you could get into how it was, how this whole thing has been potentially mishandled. So, on the one hand, you have boiling the frog too quick, but also you have the fact that it seems like Dublin is a bit more traditional than London, you might say, demographically speaking.
Oh, sure.
And so, the fact that they haven't developed this actually relatively sophisticated technique of like how to manage this whole process that Britain has done, where you've got council houses. I'm sure everybody on Twitter has seen the dialogue recently around like council house occupancy and the implications of that on the politics of, especially street politics of London. So that seems like if that was intentional, then it's quite a sophisticated way of being able to maintain some semblance of stability or regime control in the capital, and that's something that Dublin doesn't seem to quite have done to the same degree. So they've accepted all the immigrants, but they haven't actually managed to displace the native population from the capital to the same extent, so that this kind of thing can still happen. Same goes for Paris.
I was watching Rupert. I was watching a video yesterday where you had this Irish girl asking Irish men around Ireland, what do you think the most popular name is in this place? And they were all coming out with stuff like Richard or Sean or this sort kind of thing. And in every case, it was Muhammad. In every case.
Yep.
And
I mean, that's kind of the case across all of this now.
And same thing happens in England, of course, and Wales. But these dudes were just standing there because they were normies, of course. And they were standing there and it's, no way. And this Irish girl was telling me, no, Muhammad, always. It's the most popular boy's name where you live. And this is what they rely on. They rely on us not realizing this until it's it's what's already happened.
Even if that's just to be taken at face value, it has already happened, right there.
Already happened. I was going to say earlier, I don't know if anyone saw the statement that the Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar came out to make in response to the street riots. He had the nerve to turn around to the Irish public and say, ask your sisters and mothers, etc., who are they afraid of? Right now, they're afraid of Irish men. And this is now going on Twitter that Irish women, the people that Irish women should be scared of is white Irish men. Utter deflection and projection and just plain lies and wrong.
Yeah, and look, no Irish men stabbed any Irish children or Irish women. None of them did.
Yep, he's not Irish.
And of course, Leo himself is a gay. What is he? Egyptian or Indian or
Indian. Yeah,
but
they kind of cornered the entire British Isles.
They have,
yeah. None of those Irish men who were protesting about this stabbed a single Irish child or a single Irish woman. None of them did. Not one.
I think the ironic thing is, I mean, like there were foreigners who were trying to capitalize on all the chaos, and the Irish just told them to F off, basically, because they were trying to loot shops, and the Irish who were rioting, they told the foreigners to bugger off because they tried to loot all the stores. So it's like even like when the Irish riot, like they're not exactly doing it just out of like the same spirit as what the Vandals did to Rome or whatever. They're just like doing it as spontaneous anger, but they also don't loot, or like, they don't loot like a certain type of American, should we say? They just that would stop those.
You mean a certain type of African American? But yeah, all right.
Well, I'd say it's all of them, but that's just me.
I reckon there are a few African Americans who are okay, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's a-
I'd have to. I'd
well-
have to defer to Dawn on that one, to be honest.
Well, that's the same question it always is, right? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
there are some
to
that
take
are
us-
all right.
take us back literal years in this conversation. Do you have to get rid of all of them, or all, blah blah blah? Does the entire black population need to be put in prison? The answer is self-evidently no. There are plenty of people who just go to work, have jobs, and are otherwise normal human beings. But if you're the kind of person who's going to burn down a major city because some guy you've never met 1,000 miles away died because he took fucking 9 pounds of fentanyl, then yeah, go to prison. Fuck you. Or, go wherever the fuck you need to go that is not here, so you're not burning down my fucking city.
Makes sense. Makes sense, mate. Don, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is going to happen with this huge immigration from the South into America? So, like, loads of Latinos. Is this going to just totally change America, or what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I mean, it is, and the various South American immigration is only in retrospect, a relatively small portion of the problem, right? As I watch a battalion-sized element of Chinese enter my southern border, I become a little bit less worried about some other people who are crossing my southern border, right? And so, and the same thing is true of the various Middle Eastern countries, right? Because at the same time, if Middle Eastern military-age men can make it here, so can all of the weaponry that we left in Afghanistan, right?
Yep.
And so the day that I see an AT-4 on the street, my country has changed forever. And it doesn't matter if you think so or not. There is a reality that once we took all of this very functional small arms for various military engagements, if you take that and you put it on the streets of Houston, you can cry to me about mass shootings all you want. A guy dropping an RPG into the local mall is a very different problem, right? And that's not even necessarily our equipment. That's just equipment that has been floating around that area for the past 50 years. But it's not going to get better if it's man pads or javelins or AT-4s or any of these other things, and it's certainly not going to get better if the quote mass shootings are done with 240s instead of AR-15s, and on and on and on it goes. But at the same time, there's certainly a group of those the South American immigration that are of substantially more worry than others, which is to say that we have spent the last 30 or so years giving the best military training that we could, reasonably create on planet Earth to a bunch of people who then turned around to become cartels, who are now perfectly happy to come through our southern border and be like, well, you're buying the drugs or we're killing you, right? Because that's their sales method. And by the way, the drug purchasing quantities in this country should suggest that they're doing okay. Right? They usually probably don't even have to make the threats because they're making, plenty of people are dying from various drugs that 100% are coming through the southern border. I mean, there is not a functional way to look forward for how America is going to look based on recent history. It is not available. The number of people who say stupid things like you don't need a gun are about to very much need a gun. And by the time they figure it out, it's going to be too late. But that's a them problem. On the other hand, when the "I'm a tow gunner" on the back of a school bus in Oakland jokes become a lot more real, you're going to look back at 50 years of horrific policy that has done terrible things to the country and go, maybe we shouldn't have done that. And basically everybody else is going to go, yeah, no shit, right?
I mean, the perfect sense to me, mate. But yeah, look, I remember watching what was that film called? What do they call these Mexican? So I don't really want to.
Oh, you're thinking of you're not thinking of Sicario, are you?
Sicario, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I watched that movie Sicario, which I thought was pretty good actually.
If only the war on drugs was actually like that, though.
yeah, of course it's not. No, of course it's not. I know.
I want to see aerial bombardments of drug dens now.
Yeah, no, of course it's not like that. But there was this little cheeky babe who thought she could do this stuff and absolutely could not do this stuff. And in the end, the South American guy turns around and points it out to her. You can't do this shit, Don. Piss off,
Yeah.
All of us who's ever had anything to do with women know you have to do that sometimes to go.
Well,
but
people have been complaining about the southern border crisis for multiple years now, and I've had the same answer always. Turn the southern border into the machine gunner certification test for the entire U.S. military. We do not have a border crisis the moment you do that. Right?
Yeah.
You have live targets. You're expending the
war.
ammo anyway. The cost is basically the cost of moving the military there. And once you do, this is all over.
Well, did you see about those? What is it? You had stuff like alongside the wall. Apparently, there was also a drawing of a moat with alligators in them. You also had watchtowers of machine guns and sniper rifles.
You don't, Mitch. You don't even need that, really. You just need.
No, I'm just saying. No, it's a meme. That's my point. There was a meme about that back in 2017.
You need a real wall, and most American soldiers are not going to shoot women and kids. They're just not, because that's not how.
Despite the libertarians on Twitter, it turns out it doesn't really go that way.
Yeah, it's not the way we are brought up. Most American soldiers or British soldiers or Australian soldiers, we're not going to shoot women and kids because that's not what we do. But you would stop them, and then you can say, okay, 99% of you are going to fuck off back to South America. You don't have to kill them to do that. You don't. And I noticed Sniper's Nest made a
sniper in chat talking shit.
Blink twice if you need Confederate states or something like that. But whatever.
Close air support.
Close air support is probably actually more accurate. But anyway, I don't know. Yeah, you do need, absolutely. I mean, in the same way that it's not that hard. You can use little rubber dinghies to stop all these trash.
Well, here's the thing:
immigrants coming across the UK. You can stop them with rubber dinghies. You don't need warships.
Well, so you need any deterrent, right? Don't get me wrong. Any deterrent is not going to inherently stop all illegal immigration, but if it stops 90%, you have made a substantial improvement. All right.
100, yeah.
You just can't have them on the other side and be like, so here's your paycheck and your cell phone and your house. It needs to be a deterrent, not a, hey, please come so we can give you stuff. And again, it's not going to 100% solve all problems, but if you stopped 90 to 99% of all illegal immigration tomorrow, the situation would be substantially better than it is today. And any deterrent would do that.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, Don, you're an ex-US Marine Corps guy. I'm pretty sure, if you said to the US Marine Corps, all right, boys, you've got this 10 miles of border to patrol, I don't think many people would get past it.
No.
Don't.
That is a generous way to put that.
Yeah, they wouldn't. They'd all get arrested. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying for 1 second that because the U.S. Marine Corps is an old and fine corps, but I don't think they would do anything bad to women and kids. I don't. I really don't. But they would arrest all of them.
Well, everybody likes to talk about women and kids, but I watch videos from the southern border. It is by huge margins military-age males. Oh. And the simple reality is if 500 to 1,000 military-age males are trying to force their way into a Marine Corps installation, there's going to be however many military-age males there are on, less on the planet. Yep. That's what's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, for sure, mate. And that's fine. But, women and kids, they're just going to get captured, taken back to where they go, and then the law can deal with them, which is fine.
You do see that to an extent in some of the Spanish provinces in North Africa. They've become a little cucked over time, but they're still significantly more willing to use force than the continent itself, and or individual institutions on the continent, and that's what they're dealing with. Largely fighting age men, 20-something-year-olds and whatever.
Yeah.
Well, that's most of the guys on the small boats coming across the UK. They're not women and kids. They're military-age blokes. Funny that, isn't it? It's almost like our so-called conspiracy theory on the right is actually true. Yeah.
Well, but it is all like they constantly play up this element. Like the immigrants themselves will constantly play up this like colonialism element. I don't know if they do this in the United States, but you get that a lot here. And I see a lot of people kind of fall into defeatism, and they kind of go along with that. They call it like an invasion or this, that, and the other. I mean, you can call it an invasion by certain metrics, but of course, these people are like brought here. It's part of an institution. They wouldn't be able to get here otherwise.
Yeah, and it's done by the British government.
And various other European governments and all sorts.
NGOs. And NGOs are critical to this. They are that's what happened in Ireland. It was NGOs. I mean, Bono has his own NGO called One. And they imported huge numbers of sub-Saharans to Dublin. I mean, NGOs are critical to this.
100%.
I mean, we had.
Think whatever you want of the man on any other day, but Michael Yon has got a very long breakdown on Twitter of he tracked down some guy, and he supposedly has dozens and dozens of these, and he's been slowly posting them over the past couple of months, where he finds these people who are in at least the immigration to the United States in the long pipeline all the way up from South America, and they have what amounts to credit cards, and it's just a bank card. And according to them, they work for the UN. They get paid to make the trek. They get paid to live here until further notice. Now, look, that I mean, at that point, you have military-aged men who are getting paid to make this trek across whatever long. I mean. This is not substantially different than what Rangers and Airborne were doing during World War II when we were passing through enemy lines. This is an invasion definition.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely, and it's kind of funny as well because I mean, here we get this a lot. People will bring up like 1066. They'll be like, "Oh, look at 1066. We're a nation of immigrants." It's like, okay, so they're not an invasion. Is compared to an invasion. Brilliant, good job.
That was 11.
Well played.
Adam, that was like about 11,000 Normans.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, who came here as like an imported ruling aristocracy, or
last year we had what was it? 722,000 immigrants.
Yeah, it used to be the case that since Tony Blair came to power, there had been more immigration than there had been in the preceding 1,000 years. I think as of last year, it was the case that there was more immigration into Britain last year than there was between 1945 and 2000.
Oh, easily, mate, easily, because like the only immigrant. I mean, all right, you can talk about the Anglo-Saxons if you want, before, during, and after the Romans left England, but that was not all that many thousands of people, relatively speaking.
I don't know about that, Duke.
Yeah, as a percentage of the population, we are now living through the largest demographic change since the Anglo-Saxon invasion.
All right, fair enough. How many? Mitch, you're the expert on this because, you speak Old English and all this stuff. How many Anglo-Saxons and Jutes do you think eventually arrived in England? Roughly,
hundreds of thousands.
Very roughly.
Hundreds of thousands. You're talking because the entire Angles tribe, the entire tribe moved from northern Germany because their homeland was getting regularly flooded by the North Sea. So literally everyone from that particular tribe moved. And you take, for example, the Cimbrian tribe that tried to migrate into Gaul. There were 200,000 of them. So you can imagine the numbers of the Anglo-Saxons when they en masse moved into.
Would you say it was like more than 1 million, mate?
I don't know about that because it's 3 tribes. I'd say 500,000. Similar to
So half a million. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing like what we're getting today.
So, in other words, what you're really saying there, Mitch, is that we are getting more immigrants in 2 years than the whole of the Anglo-Saxon story.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
But you also have to consider relative population numbers as well. So, especially considering the Brythonic peoples had just been like massively depopulated as well.
Yep, 100%.
And at their peak, the populations were much lower anyway. So we're talking, relatively speaking, there are a lot more Anglos now than there were Britons then.
Yeah, 100%, Rupert. I don't disagree with you at all on that. But then, of course, the next big invasion of England was 1066, and I believe I'm right in saying that was less than 12,000 Normans. At least initially, it was less than 12,000 Normans.
Yeah, but it did end up causing a lot more to be invited later on. So, and
Rupert, what do you reckon maximum numbers of Normans who moved to England after 1066 were?
I don't know exactly, because the other problem is that it also represented a diminishing of the Anglo-Saxon population, and due to the fact that, typically speaking, aristocracies proliferate themselves disproportionately compared to the rest of the population.
Would you say like 25,000 max? Probably.
I don't know. The absolute number isn't necessarily that useful. Last I saw, they represented something like, I think it was between like 11 and 13% of the modern British ancestry.
Okay.
Something like that.
Fellow Europeans, though.
Yeah. I mean, speaking, they're even the same stock with one degree of removal as the Anglo-Saxons. It's just they stopped off it, like in Normandy on the way.
Yeah, and I mean, there would have been like the differences between tribes then might have been considered a lot more stark than, let's say, the differences between an Englishman and a German today. But it's still, significant. Like there was a strong ethnogenesis, and that could have probably only happened because of the similarities in the stock.
Yeah,
which is obviously very different to our situation now.
Yeah, I would just say, look, the DNA between a Norman and an Anglo-Saxon and even a Celt was very close, to be honest. Not hugely different at all. Nothing like the same difference between an Anglo-Saxon and North African, or an Anglo-Saxon over sub-Saharan African, and all this kind of stuff, which is what, of course, we're supposed to swallow these days. But
yeah, people like to draw that circle and on the map and pretend that the differences between all those peoples is represented by the difference, like a geographical sphere that covers like Western Norway, Denmark, like northern Germany, and Normandy and all that area. But that's actually a little bit deceptive because they were actually even more homogenous than that. Because, like I said, these peoples come from fundamentally even more similar stocks than would be implied, because they were, like I said, the Normans in particular were displaced. Was it Danes or Norwegians?
Yes, they were. Yes,
but in turn, the Norwegian and Danish population had been swelled significantly by the fact that the Saxons had been displaced. The pagan Saxons in particular had been displaced by Charlemagne's conquest, and so they'd all been pushed north.
Yep, 100%.
So in reality, you're probably talking about an extremely homogenous group that has a little bit of additional, probably female ancestry from what's called France at worst, but ultimately you're really just talking about Anglo-Saxons. Basically.
Very, very close. I know, for example, Lady Schlot has some ancestry and background from the French Huguenots.
Yeah, French Huguenots,
Yeah, and the French Huguenots were the French Protestants who were eventually pushed out of France by the Edicts of Nantes and all this kind of stuff. But again, they were Northwest Europeans and very closely related to the Anglo-Saxons and the Normans and the rest of it. And so they very easily fit in, they just did. But they were all, again, very closely related groups.
Slight correction. I think it was the more the revoking of the Edict of Nantes that would.
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
Also, the Huguenots were predominantly central and southern French, I think, rather than northern French. So that's probably the more remote group. But again, we are still talking about a comparably extremely homogenous population. But the Huguenots are probably the most remote group up until fairly recently.
And their migration was spread out over a reasonable amount of time compared to what we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
But also in some ways that kind of illustrates the point and how hopeless the assimilationist idea is, because a lot of Huguenot areas remained extremely isolated and kept hold of their very individual, their very particular identity, as opposed to assimilating into the wider English. That's how people like to portray it. But having met some Huguenots who basically self-identify still as Huguenots more so than English, they never really blended in a lot of cases.
Well, I mean, on that one, I mean, I don't want to drag this conversation back to Dublin, but I think the BBC claimed that guy, they tried to not say he was an immigrant, and they instead said he was an Irish citizen who'd lived there for 20 years.
Yeah, they tried to stress that he'd been there for decades and decades, and that the state broadcaster RTE are skilled in this. They don't reveal information. And
they just lie, basically, like the Blast Brainwashing Corporation.
But of course, like it's kind of it's absurd, because they're basically admitting that even after 20 years of supposed leftist integration policies,
that's the thing right there, right? Is okay, he's an immigrant who's lived here for 20 years and still thought it was a good idea to go knife children.
Yep.
Sure, this is the road we should be going down.
100% Don. 100%, man. Totally agree.
And then, you have leftists saying, "But it's poor mental health issues, wasn't it awful for him?" I mean, as Conor McGregor said, I don't give a shit about his mental health. What on earth has his mental health got to do with stabbing a 5-year-old? Well, that's not.
And how is that our responsibility as well?
Why is that our responsibility? Yeah.
Did a white Irish straight guy go and stab a 5-year-old? No, he didn't.
Well, I'm sure none of them have mental health issues, other than, I don't know, being white or something.
I bet some of them do, Don. But you know what? They don't stab 5-year-olds.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Back when I was in the British Army, like early 80s, you had the Provisional IRA, and the Provisional IRA, their leadership were all Marxists, all of them. Like, all of these fuckwits. But, and I'm not saying all the members of the Provisional IRA were Marxists, because they weren't, because, you'd have to be a bit intelligent to follow that stuff, and some of these dudes weren't, as Lady Charlotte will say, because she was a little girl back then.
Yeah.
But you know what? The British Army went in there, and we were supposed to keep the two sides apart, which is what we tried to do. But in the end, you worked out that, Pyra were scumbags who were going to kill you, even if they had to get cute little Catholic girls to chat you up at the pub and take you home, and then you get a bullet in the head from some Pyra execution squad. And they did that so often that in the end we weren't even allowed out of barracks. Or was it the loyalists, and the loyalists, listen, don't get me wrong, the loyalists did some pretty bad shit sometimes, but you know what? They never tried to kill me and my mates. So in the end, we all worked out Pyro were a bad load of shitbags, and the loyalists weren't, you know?
Well, the leadership of Pyro changed around there was a ceasefire around 1971, 72. And prior to that, the leadership had been quite Irish nationalistic, but then it changed. You had people like Martin McGuinness and Jerry Adams taking over.
Yeah, I remember Martin McGuinness.
Had been really radical. Yeah, they had been really
bastard,
radicalized in late 60s, sort of civil rights type. You know, they went on marches for civil rights, and they were very, very radicalized. They read a lot of Marx, and the whole organization changed then, and then they became real globalist Marxists, which is what they are to this very day. Yeah.
And now, of course, they want the whole of the population of Ireland to be destroyed and largely replaced by third world brown and black immigrants.
Well, it's always been it's Britsite Somalians in.
100%.
Yeah, it's been kind of funny to see these people, you know, screaming about various things. Oh, you know, the real threat to Irish women is Irish men and stuff like that. And then they'll have like you'll click on their profile and it hashtag Brits out or something.
Imagine Leo Varadkar. I couldn't. I mean, I know he's an absolute disgusting scumbag, but when I saw him, that was a real blow, even for him. My God.
But yeah, I mean, like a slightly different integration point to kind of bring this slightly back to the Huguenots. It's like you can look at Liverpool. I mean, I think Liverpool's a little bit different because I often don't think that the ethnic makeup of Liverpool is quite as Irish as most Liverpudlians seem to believe it is.
Yeah,
but you know, they have this phrase there. You know, they say "Scouse, not English." You know.
Yeah.
And some of that is, of course, because it's kind of more popular now to be part of a like a superseding group, but you know, it's still the case that you know that diaspora has been there quite a long time, and if anything, they're probably less integrated. They've become less integrated over time.
Well, there was that idea about this guys that they used to call them in Belfast the lazy Irish. Because when the Irish were leaving Ireland, they got on the boat, and the laziest ones got off when the boat stopped at Liverpool. That was the story, whether it's true or not. But it doesn't matter because it's what people chose to believe. And that whole idea about Scousers being lazy, thieving, work shy, all of that. They used to call them. My grandparents called them that they were the lazy Irish, the people in Liverpool, because they got off the boat first, and whereas other people stayed on and they went. Or they got to London, or they went to America, or they came to Australia.
People say a very similar thing about the Gurkhas down here in Kent, because the Gurkha barracks is in Folkestone. And when a lot of them retire, like quite a few of them disperse over the country, but some of them just go to the next stop up the M20, which is Ashford.
Lazy Gurkhas, lazy Irish. But yeah, and I think that kind of really damaged. You know that in Britain there was always a real kind of bad reputation around people from Liverpool and Scousers, and I remember it really well.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look, when I was a young man and I joined the British Army and I went to Northern Ireland, and it's kind of what you did. And my mum was Irish, by the way, but most of the time we were trying to keep the two sides apart, and trying to be fair. I watched a guy say to me the other day, and I know Lady Ashore, you saw this, where this twat on some chat we were in, he turned around and said the British Army was brutal to children. We were never fucking brutal to children, and if you had been brutal to children with the bias brainwashing corporation and ITV watching you, you wouldn't have survived 5 minutes, you know?
Yeah, well,
I mean, not that we wanted to be brutal to children, because we weren't, but like there was no way you could be.
Welcome to how all of this happens, right? Is some kid somewhere in a war zone got hurt and somebody was nearby with a camera, right? And
Yeah.
you don't have to like this, but war zones produce injuries. That's how that goes. And so look, there is a substantial difference. I know. I mean, nobody likes the term, but collateral damage is not the same thing as, we were out there butt stroking kids for the fun of it, right? These are two very different things. And that is not even a military shooting children. That is just butt stroking them. And these are not even in the same realm, right? Like if you were making active efforts to not go around just killing kids, then you're not brutalizing children. It's that simple.
Generally, Don, you can see photographs, and I know Lydia Shaw, who was a little girl at the time,
lovely
would agree with me.
lovely photographs, and some of these squaddies are so young, aren't they, Duke? I mean, my grandparents used to always
you
remark,
get 18-year-old little British soldiers who
they're
are
so young.
sitting there on the corner, like laughing with little kids,
dancing with kids, playing Ring Around the Rosie. If you wanted to compare numbers, you could find mountains of that kind of media relatively easily. And by the way, if you want to talk about what, regardless of whomever they are, soldiers bring back from war, like when they are the ones taking pictures, it's them giving a kid a cookie. It's them, teaching a kid to play hopscotch, right? If we were all this interested in brutalizing kids, what we would have is pictures of us beating them with stuff, right? Like, none of us want that. It's just propaganda.
Yeah, absolutely. You ain't taught to kill. You ain't taught to be nasty to kids in the military. You're just not. You're mostly taught to try and protect them, really, to be honest.
Yeah. It has caused strange problems in the military when you are fighting against a military or a force that will use children to try and kill you, right? Because like guys died in OIF and OEF because they wouldn't turn kids away. And like the end of the movie Rambo, granted it comes out of Hollywood, is Rambo sitting down and crying about how a kid with a shoe shine box blew his friend in half, right? That kind of thing doesn't happen if you're just brutalizing kids. Because like, well, the problem is that some of these kids have bombs on them, so just shoot them all, right? Like, that would be the obvious solution if we were all just willing to do that. And somehow it never happens.
100%. I think this might be Don's wife.
It is indeed Don's wife.
There you go.
Well, it's like, you get police officers who they can get videoed just arresting a black guy at the wrong time, so that on camera it looks like they're brutalizing them. Do you really think that a soldier could go about brutalizing civilians with guns without it being caught on camera?
Yeah. Well, the same thing with cops, though, right? Because when the cops are posting to their own social media, what are they posting? Them playing basketball with 10-year-old black kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're posting, right? Like, hey, this is us doing community relation things. I was out there trying to teach these kids that not all cops are bad, and that we're really out there trying to help you and be a part of the community, and this, that, and the other. And you can think whatever you want about that, but the reality is, in the end, the guys who are out there doing the violence have a fondness for protecting children. It's just true.
Yeah, I don't know, John. To me, like, if you're a civilized soldier, you kind of don't want to kill women and kids if you can avoid it. I mean, sure, mistakes happen, and modern armaments are very powerful and very fast, and you make mistakes. But in general terms, you don't want to do that. I mean, I don't know anyone who ever wanted to do that, to be honest.
Well, again, I reference media because people know it, right? You can go back to Black Hawk Down. At the end of the movie, they're leaving Somalia, and there's a guy standing there, and he's staring down the sights of his rifle, and he's, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And the Delta guy walks up right next to him. What the hell are you doing? And he looks where this guy is looking down his rifle, and there's a lady picking up an AK-47 and pointing it at him. And the Delta guy just shoots her and goes, "You can't hesitate like that. What are you doing?" I know.
Mhm.
The guy says, but it's a woman. Like, well, she's still going to kill you, right? Like, she has put you in a position where you don't have a choice.
100. Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
And
I do get that. For sure.
But that's the reality, is like the guys who do the most tip of the spear killing in the world will tell you not to hesitate. And everybody else is standing there watching you pick up the rifle, pointed at me and going, stop, 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 stop. I don't want to shoot you. Stop, stop, stop. Right.
Yeah.
These are the people brutalizing women and
You
kids.
can only wait for a certain amount of time before you say, nah, sorry.
Exactly. But, these are the people that you're supposed to believe are going out there doing all these terrible things, right? And the thing is, this is true of every war throughout history, right? You hear, there are diaries from every, at least Western military of like, so we went out there and, the kids were, they really enjoyed this part of our rations, so we gave it to them. And sometimes we'd sit and play and sing with them, and that's a 500-year-old story, right?
Yep. Yep, it is. It absolutely is. I mean, yeah, every army that's ever been anywhere did that. The same as they got, the local dogs, and they became their mates, and they looked after the local dogs. I mean, that's just what soldiers do. 100%.
Everywhere, all the time.
Always, any group of soldiers, they're going to have some pet dogs, and they're going to have some kids who they will give rations to, and all. Of course, that's if to be fair, if they're civilized soldiers, yeah. But
that's fair. There have been some various butcheries throughout history that were not particularly discerning about who they were butchering.
Yep, exactly. The dilemma graphics in the chat says, and the Black and Tans they emptied the British prisons so the inmates could fleece the Irish. That's just not true, mate. The Black and Tans were called the Black and Tans because they wore a uniform which was partly the Royal Irish Police and partly the British Army. So it was partly very dark blue for the Irish Police and partly tan because it was khaki from the British Army. But that's just not true. Dilemma graphics. That's not what happened. What the Black and Tans were a load of ex-First World War soldiers who the Brits recruited to go and fight in Ireland.
Yeah.
And it was hard to get a job back then, so quite a lot of people did it. And the Black and Tans were not half as bad as the IRA dudes will try and tell you they were. And the IRA dudes were not very good, I got to tell you. You didn't want to get captured by those dudes, babes. Got to tell you. So, yeah, I don't know. That's all
I forget who was making the complaint most recently, but I was just listening to somebody who was saying, we handicap. He was talking about the American military, but it's true of basically all Western militaries. Is we've got all these rules of engagement, we've got all these how you behave in a war zone limitations, and every single one of us knows if you get captured, the guy capturing you is going to behead you with a dull machete. If we were just playing to win, all of these would go very differently. And that same problem has existed for a very long time, where if one side captures the other, you get food, water, somewhere to live, maybe you get interrogated in some relatively gentle way, given the history of warfare. And if the other side captures you, they're beating you to death with sticks in the streets, right? And so it doesn't take a lot to figure out who are the actually terrible people in these engagements, but 100%. Somehow we need to pretend like that's not the case.
No, I believe you, mate. I go on. You're 100%. It's war is war, and at the end of the day, you're using extreme violence to win. But you Western soldiers are basically taught to try and keep that to a minimum, I guess. I don't know. You don't want to kill kids. You don't really want to kill women. And I have to say, if you look at like the war in Ukraine, as far as I can work out, the Russians are trying to fight the war that way. I'm not sure the Ukrainians always are, but the Russians are trying to fight the war in the same way. Like,
Well,
you got to kill the enemy, absolutely. But as far as I can work out, the Russians are trying not to kill kids, and they're trying not to kill women.
That war perpetually gives me an aneurysm because, people will find one artillery round that lands in a city or something and be like, see, they're trying to kill women and kids. And the avatar is not an accident. I was an artilleryman. Artillery does not shoot one round at things it wants to kill. It shoots 20 rounds or 50 rounds, a lot. And so if there's one round in the middle of a city, whether you like it or not, it was probably not intended for the purpose of killing people. It's probably somebody missed. And that's just how, and if you want to find out how true that is, go look at any of the videos or imagery that comes out of what are very clearly battlefields, right? There was that one going around of them doing some trench fighting, the Ukrainians clearing trenches, and the entire background is trees that are blown down by artillery. That's what artillery being used for effect looks like. It's not one round.
The only thing I would say to you, Don, about that is that, and I'm not an artilleryman, I'm an infantryman, but I would just say that as far as I understand it, modern artillery is so fucking accurate these days. It's unbelievable,
So in a very much the same way as modern rifles, right? The skill of your shooter is what determines how accurate the fire is, and it's not, so if you pick up a modern rifle and you are a decent shot, you are going to hit what you're aiming at. But if you hand it to someone who's never held a gun, then that round's going somewhere,
Yeah, fair enough. It's just my impression of modern artillery is that obviously you do your shot and you check it for where it lands, you got your forward observation officer, which I think is one of the things you used to do, and if that shot is on target, then you say, all right, battery fire or regiment fire or whatever it might be, and I just think that modern artillery is so fucking accurate these days that they're not doing random stuff like they maybe did in World War II,
So there's all right, artillery nerd moments. So there's a whole series of things that we developed in World War II because artillery was kind of accurate. And these days, as long as the guy who is relaying the target to the cannons is pretty accurate, that round is going exactly where he wants it. And if you tell me to put a round somewhere, that's where it's going, right? But the problem is wherever you told me to put it is where it's going. And so how accurate you are when saying, this is where I need it is a problem. So much so that when I was in 29 Palms, I had somebody request artillery, and the first correction that came back was right 1,000, which means I was 1,000 meters off the target.
Yeah, fair enough.
And what that came down to is a guy who didn't know how to call artillery, looked at a map and was one grid square off from where the target actually was. Now, that round went right where he asked for it, right? But it didn't go where he wanted it.
Don, there's a reason the most dangerous thing in the British Army is a second lieutenant with a map. But
exactly. Exactly. It's the most dangerous thing in the Marine Corps, too. But they're, and so, and no matter how many times I say this, it's never going to be enough, right? But when you see one artillery round strike somewhere, there's a very high likelihood that wherever that was, if there aren't a bunch more rounds right after that, that was a mistake, right?
Yep.
And those are, whether anybody likes this or not, those are mistakes that happen in war. And you can tell me that, like, oh, that's a reason not to have war. Be that as it may, once you have one, this is a mistake that is at least possible to happen, and in all likelihood, it's going to.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. I think you're entirely correct. Tomb of Arminius is saying if you go 100%, not half-assed. I have no idea what you mean there, mate. But anyway, I was taught, like, Don, you will laugh at this because, like, you're an artillery dude. But in the British Army, we used to get taught in the infantry how to vaguely bring in mortars, and it was always like about halving, So you get your first round, and then you halve it, and you halve it again, and eventually you go on target. But you would laugh at that because you're an artillery dude, and we were infantry dudes.
So believe it or not, it's called bracketing. It's a real thing. It's exactly how it's supposed to work. And so, I mean, that should kind of tell you what it's all about, right? Like, so you shoot your first round, and then you have the distance between you and it, and you shoot a second round, and that tells you where the target is in relation to the 2 rounds that fell, right?
Yep.
And by the way, when you're talking about modern 6-inch, 150-something millimeter artillery, you're talking about destroying a football field worth of space every time you shoot one of these rounds,
155 millimeter round. Yep, for sure. It's a big round.
Right?
It's a big round. It is. Gentlemen, please excuse me. I must go to the loo for a minute. I would very much like it if someone else would carry on talking while I'm doing that, please.
And by all means, feel free to chip in. We'll Duke and I will notoriously sit here and talk about military things for like 6 hours. So cut in where you feel.
Sadly, I've got nothing to add on that front.
Yeah, it's a small world that way. So
yeah.
Nope. Back to the silence. Best content on the internet, people.
I was going to bring up as a subject, I don't know if anyone else saw this LBC clip that's going around of Matthew White on his talk radio show.
No, I'm not familiar. You'll have to.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen that one.
It's quite recent. I think it was from this morning, but basically he had a guy call in who was saying about essentially the pace and rate of change, essentially immigration and other such things. And the guy, this Matthew White's just firing back by going, change just happens. It's just one of those things you've got to accept. You can't keep railing for the past and this, that, and the other. It was kind of funny though, because in the middle he brings up this bit where he basically goes like, you can't listen to like Farage in his talk on Brexit. So it's like, okay, so you've got something that you still rail against after all these years, like sitting on the radio show pissing and moaning about Brexit still half a decade on. But no one else can have any complaints. Change just happens, everyone. Nothing to worry about.
Oh yes, it just happens. Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. It's convenient.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose we can complain for our own change. Mass deportations.
I presume that that's still true while the Irish are rioting because a kid got stabbed, right? Change just happens.
Yeah.
Just deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, of course he won't be he won't sit back, I think, quite so quietly if change was being done by any other regime than the one he's under now.
Well, I mean, of course not, right? The propaganda is getting almost ridiculous in that sense, where this thing that everybody obviously hates, well, that just happens, bro. But if we try to change what is happening, then change does not just happen. Shut up, you far right extremist.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Forgive me for that.
No worries. Did we want to talk about this Dutch election as well?
Well, I would like to talk about that, and I would also like to talk about the fact that the only people not allowed to have their own places are us, basically. If
Absolutely.
that makes sense. if that makes any sense, Alan. But yeah, the Dutch election, Geert Wilders. What do you think about that, mate?
I don't know. He's I mean, he's been around for a long time, hasn't he? I mean, he's been sort of in and around politics for well over 20 years.
Ever since that Pim Fortuyn fellow, I think his name was, he's kind of like a protege of that guy. So
I was trying to remember his name earlier. I couldn't remember. I thought it was like Fortuyn, Pim, because he's part, like they were all part of this sort of libertine, sort of Dutch Belgium sort of libertine bloc where they're.
And it is quite libertine, isn't it? Because he's in favour of gay marriage and
Pim Fortuyn is actually a homosexual. Yeah.
That was the Dutch guy who was killed by the Islamic dudes. Is that not right?
No, he was killed by a Green
Animal
Party
rights,
member, I think.
Yeah. There was the other guy that wasn't there. There was what was his name? The filmmaker. Was it
Theo Summit?
Yes, because he was involved with that Ian Hershiali, the lady who's just
that sounds right, Lydia Schlott. That sounds right. Yeah, it does. So, what Adam, what do you think about Geert Wilders win? And will he become the Netherlands Prime Minister, do you think? And if he does, will it make any difference?
He's got to find someone to go into compact with, hasn't he?
Yes, he's got to make a coalition.
I mean, the funny thing is when you have a hung parliament here, everyone acts like it's the end of the world. But for large stretches of Europe, that's just common politics. It's going to be kind of funny to see all these parties that would happily align themselves with parties that they claim are on the other end of the spectrum, and they suddenly won't align with him because he wants to reduce immigration somewhat. It's like, I mean, I'm still kind of excited to see what happens and what he does. Like, you know, he's kind of a bit of a lefty, but he's anti-immigration, and that's definitely a step in the right direction.
100%.
Yeah, and it's
Wiggles makes a point in the chat here, and I watched David Kern's video on this dude, and I quite like David Kern, by the way. But he said he's a socially liberal Zionist, and I think there is some truth in that.
Yeah, he falls into what some people here would call like the counter-jihad movement, and that sort of sphere of things. You know, he's definitely not going to be my first choice, but.
Well, I mean, it is worth bearing in mind how, like, what Geert Wilders the meme is versus Geert Wilders the actual politician, because I mean, there was someone who was making the very good point on Twitter about this, is that what do people think they're voting for? They might not get it from Geert Wilders, but what are they? What is this portion of people actually looking to see push through? And that itself can be an important metric and something that's kind of worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, Rupert, I 100%, mate. I wish someone like Gilders would get elected in Britain. I just wish they would. You know.
Well, I mean, in a sense, it's similar because we do have immigration, in particular, being a very high priority issue. It's just that our political system does not allow that to be an issue that is broached. And, you know, maybe that's the same for everybody else. At least they have other people talking and in some cases very tepidly acting what they say. But in the UK, obviously, it's incredibly dire. But nonetheless, we do still have a similar phenomenon of people voting for lower immigration, even if they never get it.
Yep.
Yeah. But it was Geert Wilders the one whose wife lost her leg in that arson attack, or am I thinking of someone else? One of the other sort of libertine populist right politicians over there.
I'm not sure, mate, to be honest. Maybe one
remember.
of the other guests knows. I don't know. Mitch,
Not sure.
you know that?
No, I don't know who that is. I mean, Geert Wilders' wife is a Hungarian Jew, I believe, when a Christina Markoy or something like that. So,
I mean, look, I've got to say, I think that Rupert made a good point. Like, if you can get a guy like that, yeah, I'd vote for him for sure. I would, even though I don't agree with all of his policies. You know, gay marriage and what have you. I don't, but let's get some of our policies in power rather than none. which is where we are at the moment. You know.
Well, how do we know it's not going to be another Maloney character?
Well, yeah, that's the thing is what happens. It's a similar phenomenon that what's going to happen in Italy going forwards, because are people going to be happy with the fact that a Maloney 180'd on a significant portion of her theoretical policies, or are things going to change? I don't necessarily know what is the correct model for that issue, because it does seem like Maloney is staying relatively popular. So for one thing, maybe there's just things that we're not quite understanding about the Italian political, domestic politics from the outside. But there is also a possibility that because you now have a political environment or a political bloc that is willing to vote for these certain policies, then they'll cycle through people until or parties until they actually get what they're demanding.
Yeah, like people get really upset over the failing of parties to follow through. It's an issue if they put the discussion point away, like David Cameron managed to after his initial election. But if they don't, which a lot of these people either aren't or can't, it's still kind of a win, because you're still pushing that needle. You're still mainstreaming those views and expanding the base on those issues.
I kind of get it a bit with Maloney, because like I'm a bit like Marcus Furious, who I remember was a big Maloney fan, but I suspect that was mainly because she was relatively cute, I don't know. I mean, like for women, if they're relatively cute, I don't expect much more out of them than that, to be honest. I spent half of last night talking to a lady, and I'm far more drunk and have been awake far more hours than I would have been if I wasn't doing that. But, they're girls, and girls are nice, so that's all right.
Well, in retrospect, also, the problem with Italy is that the Italian right has a very long and storied history of cooperation with the CIA. So,
yeah.
Maybe we should have known that had we not been so optimistic.
Prior to, I'm not so sure that was true prior to about 1943, though, Rupert, when
CIA
the
system doesn't
Americans
go back that far.
Yeah, well, of course, it was the ONC or whatever it was called then. But
OSS, I think. But yeah, I'm talking strictly post-war.
Yeah, but I mean, prior to, up to, I don't know what, 43, when the Americans and the Brits were invading Italy, and of course the Americans got all their mafia people to go and help them in invading Italy, as I recall. I think that's correct, isn't it, Rupert?
Basically, yeah. The fascists took a very hard line against the mafia in Sicily, and so when I don't know to what extent they did it with an understanding of, going into it, and like whether that was a coherent plan. But certainly, when they arrived in Sicily, they found this large group of people who were kind of willing to be very helpful to them, and it was the mafia, because the mafia had lost a lot of their power from a successful crackdown.
Yeah. So they didn't like Mussolini and those guys. Yeah, I mean, we would need to get Marcus Furious on here, who is an Australian of Italian descent, to tell us the truth about that. But yeah, for sure, I think that's pretty much what went on. Anyway,
well, it was like Mussolini had his that guy called Cesare Mori, who was called Prefetto di Ferro, which literally means prefect of iron, because he literally he would use very draconian tactics to overcome a mafia, including killing off livestock, taking children captive. He really went complete apeshit against the mafia, but no one complained because he actually did work. Like the mafia were either deported or severely disempowered, so that the only time they got back into power in Sicily was with the Americans. So that's kind of like the short of it. Italy under Mussolini overcame the mafia. Very draconian and very
Makes sense.
controversial methods. But
Makes sense. But I mean, of course, that was FDR, and FDR had a lot of communist influence in his government and what have you. So, fair enough.
I don't know. There's actually a couple of decently long historical videos on this sort of thing. There's a I'm terrible with names, so you're gonna have to forgive me here. But there was a guy that knew Lucchese from New York, and Lucchese came from Sicily, and that guy was a colonel in the army, and he called up Lucchese and said, "Hey, we're thinking about invading. Do you still know anybody over there?" And Lucchese was in jail at the time, and he said, "Yeah." Well, okay, to be fair, no one is precisely clear on what he said, but very shortly thereafter, he was released from jail and somehow ended up back in Sicily. So,
and folks, Don is a U.S. Marine Corps guy, and so the U.S. Marine Corps spent the whole of World War II in the Pacific, so he doesn't care, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't me, wasn't mine.
Nothing to do with Don and his corps. So there we go.
No, we just shot people on the other side of the world.
Yeah, I don't like to always necessarily assume that there was some kind of intent there, but yeah, I mean, I am not at all surprised to hear that was the case.
Yeah,
it makes sense to me. It does, and I'm like, there was all sorts of bullshit going on in World War II.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, I used to think there were good guys and bad guys in World War II, and the older I got, and I have to say a lot older, because even when I was 25, I was probably still totally held by the, I don't know what AA would call the Boomer Truth regime, I guess. But like, once I got about 30 plus, less and less of World War II made sense to me. And less of it was good guys versus bad guys. And it was more like this particular group versus this.
That's
particular
completely
group.
unfair. There were clearly bad guys in World War II. We had officers then too.
Don, 100%, mate. 100%. There were officers and people who work for a living. So, yeah. Yeah, that's so true, man. That's so true. But yeah, honestly. But yeah, no, this like good guy, bad guy thing from World War II is so bloody childish. It really is. Of course, you're always the good guys if you're saving your own blokes from being killed. Of course you are, 100%. But like the idea that one side was totally evil and the other side was totally good, that's flipping childish. It really is. I'm sorry, it just is. But yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's Lady Schwab will know that the provisional IRA were not nice guys. They used to blow up women and kids and people all over the bloody place. And as a British soldier, you could go through a shopping centre and find a chick's foot still in a high heel shoe. You could find it. Been there, done that. But were the were provisional IRA all evil? I don't know. I think they were pretty evil, to be honest with you. But and then I've had guys turning around and saying, "Oh no, the British Army was evil to little kids." Well, I never ever saw that, to be honest. Never saw it.
Look, I think on both sides you're going to get people, and I mean, I grew up in a loyalist area that was controlled by loyalist paramilitaries, and on both sides you're going to get people who just like killing. Yeah, you're going to get people who get into these organizations because they get the ability, they get the tools and the skills to go out and kill people because they just like killing. because we got into an argument in your live chat last week. Duke, one of your chat members was talking about the Shankill Butcher Gang, and he was insisting to me that the UVF, who were a paramilitary group in Belfast then, were ordering these murders, and I told him that they weren't, that the particular person who was doing it was just a serial killer, and he just liked
in the end, the UVF killed him, as far as I know.
They did. It was they couldn't control him. He was a liability. He was dangerous. They were afraid of him, and they killed him. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
People just like killing, and if they can get into a position where they can
evil people do.
Yeah, evil people do.
Yeah.
Of course they do.
My experience, most soldiers, they'll kill someone who is a threat to them and their mates. Other than that, they don't really want to kill anyone, really.
No.
But that's just me, and I may be wrong, but, whatever. But however, the thing I would like to end this stream on it is that why is it that, Israel is a country for Israelis and Jewish people, and that's great. And we should all get very angry that Hamas attacked them. But for some reason, you can't be an Anglo-Celtic person or an Australian or an American or Canadian or a New Zealander, and all of which are basically, white people, let's say. But you can't be one of those guys, and you should have a country. That's not allowed. Ireland, for example, we've seen, doesn't matter, you can stab as many little Irish children as you like, but God forbid that any Irish people go out and riot and say, nah, sorry, you're not allowed to kill little Irish children.
Or French in France, they had an attack just this last week.
Yep, 100%, Urban, 100%. I totally agree. I just don't get how we are supposed to be so dumb these days that we can't see this, why can't we defend our own people,
Well, the most generous take on this is that there's a very large swath of people, particularly in positions of power, who think that if one side agrees to peace, then everybody has agreed to peace. And that is the nicest way to say it. And it turns out that to have a peace agreement, both sides have to agree to peace. Who knew?
Yeah. And only one side is ever required to agree to peace, and strange to say that's us.
I mean, the thing is with this Irish thing recently is that you've seen this rhetoric resurface that comes up often, where the implication. I mean, they wheeled out the army so quick in Dublin, or well, not the army per se, but they elevated the level of force
the
over
military
and above.
The military cops, yeah.
And of course, there's this thing is that what we actually need to fear is the white man goofing off, right? You see this a lot. You can go and read a lot of these books on forced integration in the United States. There's a book about, I think it's Rosedale, and that comes up in that book as well. There's a bit in that which I think someone reposted as excerpts recently on Telegram or Twitter or somewhere. Where this guy brings up about the enormous amounts of violence that was happening in some of these communities that were being largely deracinated, and his fellow academics were just like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be bad if these white people had some sort of reaction? It's the Norm Macdonald joke, but about sort of 45 years before Norm Macdonald said it, and poignant ever since. It gets the old noggin jogging.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone is allowed their own space except us, which is, Anglo-Celts or white people. really care what you want to call us. But
white people need to be supervised at all times.
yeah, because we only created 99.5% of the modern mob. But yeah,
right,
sure.
but we can't be allowed to create it again. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? I mean, to some extent, part of this is that they can't have these strong homogenous achieving groups that could run roughshod over their declining, decaying, decrepit power structure that they're kind of trying to fortify themselves within.
Yeah, I look. My deal is that I saw on Twitter recently. What is some African person said we're all going to go back to Africa and take all our inventions with us. And someone said, what is the African invention you'll most miss? And like, the only one I could think of was mud huts, basically, because
peanut butter. Even then, I'm not entirely sure.
Even
I've
peanut
no idea
butter.
what have they invented. I've got no idea.
They haven't invented anything ever, but I mean, mops maybe. But I'm not. I don't want to say I'm racist, but it's ridiculous because at the moment the anti-white racism is so huge that if you're not racist, what the hell are you thinking? That's my view at the moment, to be honest.
Well, the best thing is to be racist, Duke.
Well, I am a bit, but and if someone tells me I'm racist, I just laugh at them. But I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, Africa invented nothing. In hundreds of thousands of years, they didn't invent a single damn thing. Nothing. So whatever.
Well, we'll do them a deal. They can keep the ships that we send them back on.
Yeah. Which will all just rust in harbor and go to shit. But yeah. I don't know. I don't know, boys. I don't. It makes me sad. But on the other hand, we can't give up. Like, we can't. Because I see people all the time, and I see Americans saying it, and I see some British people saying it, that, London is lost, and you guys should all go get fucked because you're all fucked. And I hate this shit. And I hate this shit where British and American nationalists slag each other off. And what good does that do us? All it helps is our enemies. As far as I'm concerned, it just helps our enemies. Look, Don, I know, is an absolute 100% American nationalist, and I don't blame him because he's an American. And I'm an absolute 100% British nationalist. Yeah? And I'm sure the same goes for everyone else on this stream to some degree or another. But us slagging each other off, all it does is help our left-wing enemies, and it's all they want to see. And we should stop it. There's no point.
A academic agent has a roundtable discussion coming up in his cigar stream this week on that very subject called "Is the online right too negative?" Well,
sometimes, Lady Shaw, I do believe that we are. Yes.
yeah.
Victimism is a big
answer
issue.
yes. Yeah, there's your answer. Yes, it is.
This is funny. All right, this is funny. Where are we? Geraldo Riviera, Americans can't even spot color because there's a U in it. Yeah, right. All right. That's funny. All right, that is funny. But no, honestly, dudes, I don't see the point. I think that people like myself and Don and Charlemagne and what's his name? Lady Shot. Who's the guy who I like? Who's an American?
Oh God, Jay Burden. No.
Yeah, he's good. He's
Jay
good.
Burden's nice. He's
So,
really...
so's Dave, the distributor.
Oh, the distributors. Yeah, he's wonderful.
Yeah, he's good. And there's also bloody hell, the guy who did the debate recently with AA on
Semiagog.
Semiagog. He's
wonderful.
also excellent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get in arguments with these guys because basically none of them want anything I don't want. You know, it's just, getting in arguments on that sort of scale with these people is just like, it's only helping the lefties. It's not helping us. That's all I would say.
All I will say on this whole subject is that it is basically why I don't make content in this space anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. Don, it does. Like Don, I know. Don's a good guy. Like, you know, if you want to ask him what happened on January 6th or do people deserve 20 years in jail for something they did on January 6th? Or the poor little white girl who was completely unarmed, who was shot by a black cop on January 6th? Don will tell you the truth on all those things.
I'm sure I can think of somebody who, you know, I watched a guy hose down a bunch of cops with some bear spray, but that's as bad as it gets. You know,
Don, man, look, that woman who I believe was an American military girl originally.
Yeah, Ashley Babbitt. Air
Ashley
Force vet.
Babbitt. Yes.
Yep, totally unarmed, shot to death by a black American cop, and the black American cop got some medal for it. But there you go.
Yeah.
And she did nothing, and she was no threat to that dude. I mean, anyone else who had killed her would have got a murder charge.
Yeah.
Not that black cop, though. But we are losing really badly, guys. Honestly, we really are. Or, you know,
we're not losing any more than we ever were. It's just same old, same old. We're at the end of the nothing ever happens era.
You might be right, mate. You might be right, mate.
On that note, though, I have to pop off because I need to get some sleep.
That's all right, mate. Thank you very much, Ammon. You're always you're the co-host of these streams. So anyway, thank you for joining.
Yeah, no problem. I'll talk to you all later. It's been nice chatting.
Go on, mate.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Yep, good to speak to you again.
All right, guys. I guess we're going to wind this up a little bit. Rupert, anything you would like to shill or had some thoughts on or whatever?
Yeah, I'll happily share my YouTube channel. Same name, Rupert August. Diving into YouTube, you should be able to find it fairly easily, or my Twitter for that matter, under the same name. My last video is a little while ago now. I've been sort of delayed in producing the next one, but yeah, I still think it's pretty good, and I've got another one coming out hopefully very soon.
Rupert's a good historian, by the way, guys, and he has done some stuff with Apostolic Majesty, and I hope he will do some more in due course, because Apostolic has been making a drop-dead, really good series of videos recently, since he decided he's not going to do politics anymore. He just does history. He's been doing really well.
Yeah, just for brief for anyone that might be interested, I'm running through the historical and ideological foundations of monarchy.
Makes sense. Makes sense, mate. Makes sense. I will just say to you, Rupert, I would love to get you to come on my next Wellington in the Peninsula stream. Hannah, have you seen Napoleon, the film?
I have not, and based on what I've seen so far, it's not too high on my priority list either. But I probably will have to at some point, if only for the the rite of Twitter passage or something.
Pretty sane. As far as I can work out, it's awful. It's really awful.
Yeah, I've heard that too. It's just a mess. It's a mess.
It should be called Josephine and Napoleon. But anyway. But yeah, fair enough. Okay, Rupert. Lady Schlott, you have a excellent channel these days.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind. Goodness, I only started it earlier this year, and I've made quite a few videos, but I've got to start live streaming, and that's the next thing for me when my workload eases a bit as we head towards the end of the academic year here in Australia.
That's
A bit more time, maybe.
Lady Schlott, that's fine. You're a wife and you're a mother, and you homeschool those kids, and also, of course. Most of your videos are artistic stuff. They're on art.
It's a bit about what I do. The various events I've gone to here in Melbourne, things I've got up to, bit of activism, bit of politics, bit of poetry. But yeah, things that it kind of just things that interest me. I'd like to try and get my Barry Lyndon video finished, but and not get another copyright strike. That would be really nice. That wasn't very good.
Barry Lyndon is a great film. Anyone who hasn't watched it, go and watch it. Every scene is an 18th century
It's
thing.
beautiful, beautiful
much.
film. And then I'm not quite sure of the date and time yet, but I am appearing on this year's Millennial, which will be interesting. It's quite a nice lineup, and that's in December. I think it's about 17 days time. I think it starts, so that's going to be nice.
You're way ahead of me, though. I'll never appear on Millennial. I'm not famous enough.
Don't say that. Goodness. Well, I would have said that. I didn't even have a channel a year ago, so you know. But it's really nice to be asked, and it's always interesting. So Christmas wouldn't be Christmas and the DR without.
Yeah, no, I always watch Millennial, but I only watch like people like Semi Agog, and I will definitely watch your one this week.
Thank you so much. But, I'm going to try and bang the drum for our scene down here in Melbourne, down here in Australia, because we really need to get some more in real life events going.
Chris Gard seems to be working on that.
He is. Yeah, that's great.
And Chris Gard is a very good man. So yeah, that'll be cool.
Yeah, so that's just keeping busy, and thanks so much for inviting me onto your 150th. Yeah.
Lady Schlott, you are almost always most welcome on my stream.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to come on.
Mitch, anything you would like to shill or talk about before we close?
Danny, if you wanted to talk about, I don't know, there's not really much coming out of Ukraine other than just more footage of women dying in trenches on the Ukrainian side.
Yep, it's just Ukraine is losing worse and worse. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm seeing. Yeah.
Well, it's like Avdiivka is pretty much like the artillery side of a war. The Ukrainians, I mean, they at least had always some artillery. They never had anything like what the Russians had. But in the case of Avdiivka, it's just the Ukrainians are just drowning in like Russian shells bombing them, and they can't really send any shells back because, from what I've heard, it's a matter of like Ukrainian artillery support is basically non-existent at this point in the battle for Avdiivka.
Well, apparently, as far as I've worked out, like all the Ukrainian artillery shells, and Don would know a bit about this because he was an artilleryman. But apparently, all the Ukrainian artillery shells that were going to Ukraine are now going to Israel. So Ukraine's pretty fucked in that regard. So
no, that's basically how it is.
Well, the other problem as well is there seems to be some bottlenecks in the ramping up of production. So the US recently revised down their targets for what the next, I think it was about 5 years, looks like for artillery supplies and production. So evidently something's going on behind the scenes that's making things go slower than they'd like. They can't just throw money at the problem, it seems.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
we throw money, but if there's nothing to
building
buy,
an artillery
Well,
shell
yeah.
production plant is a big deal.
Yeah, it's like you had Germany, who, in their latest aid package, they sent 1,020 155mm shells.
Which won't last them 5 days, but yeah, okay.
It won't even last you 5 hours if you're going off like artillery expenditure on the in the Ukraine war. So
no, the Russia's firing like, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 shells a day, easy. So, yeah.
oh, it's like in a lot of cases, just literally just it's like a shooting gallery, like fish in a barrel on the part of Ukrainians when it comes to Russian artillery targets. It's just Ukrainians are kind of helpless at this point in this phase of a battle for Avdiivka, because it's not just like there's no Avdiivka is a city where there's no nearby settlements to it. So if the Ukrainians were to retreat, they'd have to do so on roads where there's not really much cover from any sort of Russian drones or artillery or anything like that.
Mitch, Avdiivka is the place where, like, when you look on the Western maps, the pro-Western maps, like, it's sticky. It's like a cock seeing into the Russian lines, almost surrounded. Now,
yeah, surrounded on 3 sides, pretty much, and
it's
at least
like
back.
Any military dude will tell you, well, that's fucked, and you have to leave it. You know, any military dude with half a pissy brain, you know.
Well, it's like the thing is, the Ukrainian strategy is kind of like what Hitler had done on the Eastern Front, like in terms of a Festung strategy, where every city must be held, even to a point where it just screws over your military strategy or any sort of strategic advantage you might have otherwise gained through being a lot smarter with your resources. But there you go.
I mean, I'm sorry, Mitch, but, like, you know, you don't have to be a military genius to see if you are 3/4 cut off. If you don't pull back, you're just going to be surrounded. You know, you don't have to be like, I don't know. Let me think of a real military genius now. You don't have to be Alexander the Great to work that one out. You know.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, it's a problem. Like the Ukrainian side, they just think, oh well, because this is like the Slavic approach of war. This goes for everyone, like the Polish, Ukrainians, Russians, all the other Slavs. They literally just will defend each meter of ground if ordered to the death, rather than abandon a single meter. Even if, like, because it's very stubborn, it's very stupid from our point of view, but that's just the way they fight wars. It's just if ordered to, they'll literally just defend even most indefensible of scenarios if ordered to. It makes no sense.
I just think it's weird, man. I do. I just think it's weird. It's like, you know, if you're 3/4 cut off already, pull back, because otherwise you're going to have to surrender. It's the only way things are going to go.
Have you seen what Ukrainians post on social media? Like, they have no appetite for surrender. Like, they'll literally just fight until every single man, woman, and child is dead on their side.
I keep seeing dead Ukrainian women these days, but I mean, that's why.
Because like, you know, it's just, I don't see a realistic scenario anytime soon where Ukraine surrenders, unless you were to get Russian tanks rolling down the streets of Kiev and Lvov, because that's just
that
like
could happen. That could happen.
Yeah,
Don, you were about to say something, mate. What were you saying?
Well, so warfare in general, of course, the Ukrainians don't have any appetite for surrender, because Zelensky gets up on TV and is like, we're about to win. And no one who is about to win or thinks they're about to win has an appetite for surrender. Right. And so to have that appetite at all, they would have to be feeling directly the effects of the war. And at this point, it should be pretty clear to everyone that Russia is not actually all that interested in taking all of Ukraine. If they were, they would have pushed in a lot further by now.
Yeah.
And the only way the propaganda can deal with this is to say that the Russians can't push in further, except that every time the Russians push, they take whatever they're pushing at. And so, you'd have to be away from the propaganda and presumably closer to the combat. I would bet if you polled within the nearest 25 miles of the front line, and only the nearest 25 miles of the front line, like, hey, do you think we should just, figure out some peace deal? They'd be like, yes, anytime, whenever you're ready. Now would be good, right? But if you're polling people who are 150 miles, right, from a front line, why would they have any appetite for surrender? That's a war that's happening over there, right? Yeah, we're doing our part. We're helping out, right? Exactly. Yep. So of course they don't have any appetite for surrender. The huge majority of the populace is not engaging in this war in any direct way.
But look, I think Ukraine has lost a generation of young men.
At this point, yeah. It's been 6 months since they lowered the recruiting age to 14. That's not a good sign.
And up to 60 as well, Don, as far as I understand.
I heard it was up to 70 from what I heard.
Yeah.
And of course,
at this point, if you can walk without a walker, they mean you.
Yeah, they're also now putting cheeky babes in the front line as well. Look, Russia's going to go to the Dnieper River, in my opinion, and probably also take the southern port there. What's it called, Mitch?
Odessa.
They're going to take Odessa. I mean, like, why wouldn't they after the number of men they've lost, which is far less than Ukraine has lost?
Well, it's like the thing about Odessa, that's surreal. Is like you often like here and there, like you'll see photos of like people just unfurling banners in the middle of Odessa, going Odessa, Ruski Gorod, or Odessa, Russian city, because there's quite a few people in Odessa who think that way, but they're not. You can't really be too open about it because look what happened in 2014. Like 56 Russian nationals.
When they burnt people to death in a building in Odessa who were Russians rather than Ukrainians. Yeah, I know. But yeah, I don't know. I just think Russia's going to take Ukraine up to the Dnieper, probably take Odessa too, make sure they have no Black Sea coast, and then they'll say, okay, you can have the rest of it, boys, but you're not allowed to join NATO. And that's going to be like the biggest defeat that the US and NATO and the West has had, I don't know, forever, basically. I mean, it's even going to be worse. Mind you, we have to think now, because you have to say, well, we lost in Vietnam and we lost in Afghanistan and we lost in Iraq. So, I mean, I don't know. How many times do we have to lose before we learn? I don't know.
Well, it's like with those wars, they weren't really... I mean, you take, for example, Germany, after the First World War, they lost like 13% of their land and all this. Ukraine, if what you say comes true, that's like 3/4 of their land taken away from them.
Yep.
And the remaining quarter isn't exactly as most very productive compared to Donbass or... No.
They're going to be desperately worried. Can we survive without Poland taking us over? But do you know what? If I was Putin, that's exactly what I would do, because, it's where we pushed him.
Well, it's like, I mean, you got Michael in chat who goes like, Russians too incompetent. I think it's just more, I don't know. I look at the Russians, it's like they haven't really accomplished a full encirclement akin to what you get in, like, I don't know, what happened at Stalingrad in 1942, 1943. So there is some truth to that. But then again, it's
I don't think that's true at all, to be honest with you, Mitch. I think the truth is the Russians are trying to minimize their casualties.
Does an encirclement do that, though? If you encircle the enemy totally, like, let's say they cut up all...
No, that makes them fight a lot harder.
Yeah, it does. If you surround them, they can't surrender. Rupert is entirely correct. If you surround them and they've got no way out, they're going to fight to the last if they can.
I believe it was actually a common Mongol tactic, actually, that they deliberately left an avenue for retreat, because that way that they could pretty much guarantee that the opposing army, when it knew it was beaten, they would go for that. They did
that to the Russians at Kalka River as well, I believe, that's one battle, because apparently in Russian military academies they all study that battle. That's the one battle which every Russian general has to study. is the Battle of Kalka River, because it's kind of like well, on one hand, of historical reasons from a Russian perspective, but also because I don't know, you can see elements of that strategy implemented where they'll like surround you on three sides, but they still give you a little out, as it were, a little out path.
You
if
always
want
want that little out, mate, because that's the way the guys you want to fuck off can leave. Because if you can't,
Okay,
then you might as well fight to the death if you think bad things are going to happen to you, you know?
okay,
but
but I would
also,
also say
Russia's pretty sensible in that, in general terms, they've treated the Ukrainian POWs pretty well. So, yeah.
well, the thing I'm more thinking of is, okay, well, every time, let's say the battle for Bakhmut, where there were Ukrainians who were able to escape from the city before it fell. Those guys to be battle hardened, so that in the next battle they'll still be fighting in the next battle. Whereas if you encircle the city of Bakhmut as the Russians, and those guys were completely neutralized, or they just encircled anyway, they wouldn't be really much of a threat compared to what happened in actually where they managed to escape and they lived to fight another day. Granted, like the Ukrainians do not help themselves by just being generally incompetent with how they use up their manpower and so on, or I should say personnel. Never, they're conscripting women en masse. But yeah,
Well, that ain't going to work, is it? Because women are shit soldiers. I'm sorry, they're just not. But as we will all find the next time Western nations have to fight a war with women soldiers who can't even carry a basic pack and the ammunition and supplies, they just can't do it. So, yeah, we'll all find that out in due course. So I don't really care. And you know, when we all find that an NCO swearing at you and a woman taking you to court because the NCO swore at you, is not going to make a good army. But we'll all find that in due course. Don't worry.
It's coming. Anyway, that said, I do need to get out of here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Thanks for having me, guys. Thanks for having me for 150.
Don, thank you very, very much for joining the stream. And Semper Fi. Go on, mate. Go
Semper
on.
Fidelis, gentlemen. Have a good one.
Look after yourself.
Yeah, good to speak to you.
You too.
Yeah. Well, that was Don the Pleb, who's a very good man. I'm very happy to have on my stream anytime. And a good American dude, by the way. And sometimes, like I said, I see British and American rivalry and we slag each other off, and I don't think it's worth doing, to be honest.
It depends on the situation at hand. Like you will see Americans who will just like, for example, they don't have a Muslim problem like we do, so they're a lot more naive about Islam versus Israel, for example.
Mitch, I totally agree with you, but you know what? Don's a good bloke, and he will never do that. All right.
I'm not talking about Don Well. I'm talking about some American. I'm talking about quite a few Americans.
For sure, mate. For sure. Of course.
Like,
they're really.
They're the thing is, I don't know.
Americans, yes.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't know Don.
Americans and they're idiot Brits. Totally agree.
Well, that's what my point was. I don't know I don't really know Don, so I'm not going to speak on his behalf or speak against him because I said I don't know him. But like, I'm just saying,
Don's a good bloke, mate. Don't worry. He wouldn't be. Yeah. He wouldn't be somebody I like if he wasn't, and he is a good bloke. But yeah, you're right. But you know, there are idiot Americans and there are idiot Brits too, sometimes. But yeah, that's cool. I got no problem with that. I just think that British and American nationalists arguing with each other while both our countries burn is stupid. That's what I mean. But anyway. All right. Lady Schlott, anything you would like to show, my dear good lady? Or maybe she's not listening. I don't know. Oh, God. You're muted, Lady Shaw. Okay. Who's not muted? Well, everyone's muted. Mitch, Anything you wanted to show?
Not from
Lady
me.
Charlotte has lost her power, so don't worry about that. Anything you wanted to show, Mitch?
Not from me.
Okay. Lady Charlotte has lost her power, so we can't do anything about that. Mitch, you're on Twitter, yeah?
Yeah.
Mitch has a pretty good channel on Twitter. Go and check him out. So there's that. Rupert, anything you would like to show before we close?
Yeah, like I said earlier, just my YouTube channel, but we've already gone over that, so I think we can probably close.
Cool, mate. Thank you very much to my guests this evening, particularly Rupert and Lady Charlotte and Don and Mitch and Alman. Many thanks for joining us this evening. I don't know, guys. I don't think we're winning. In fact, we're definitely not winning. But more people are waking up than were. So we are kind of winning. Hang on. Wiggles in it is telling me I should look at entropy. So I will. There we go.
Someone's asking.
Nah, there's nothing on entropy so far as I can work out. I did look.
Did we bother answering my question about Keith Woods versus AI?
Oh, okay. Someone wanted me to talk about that, did they? Okay. I guess I could. Carefully.
It's just like both sides are flawed, but at the end of the day, I mean, Keith Woods at the moment is doing God's work with, like, I mean, I've seen him reply to like, Conor McGregor trying to, like, and I've heard, like, and I saw Conor McGregor retweet the likes of Way of the World and Keith Woods earlier. So, as far as I'm concerned, Keith Woods is pucker. Although, I mean, I remember one tweet or Telegram message or whatever it was where he was like bigging up the IRA, which
Yeah, that doesn't really surprise me, to be honest with you. If you're talking about Keith, that doesn't surprise me. Hang on a minute. I will. There we go. All right. I can only tell my own truth about this. Keith Woods, I don't know. I don't know Keith Woods really well, to be honest with you. I know he goes and talks to some people who I don't particularly like. Whereas on the other end, AI, and people will tell me AI is half Persian and stuff like this. Fine, don't care. Who is Barra out those? I don't know. I really don't know. I tend to think AA is all right. I don't like the way he has trannies on his streams, but all right. I think he's less glowy than Keith Woods, but again, that's just my opinion. I may be wrong about some of those things. So I don't know. I did check entropy. We don't seem to have any of those things. So I will play us out with June. It's even a good tune, by the way, guys.
Well, it seems we lost Duke, and Mitch has already decided to drop. So good night, everyone.
Hopefully, guys, thank you very much to Rupert for closing my stream. It's most kind of you, mate. But yeah, I'm sorry I did get cut off. So yeah, thanks for joining us for our 150th stream. Which, given that we don't stream over Christmas and New Year, is pretty much our 3-year stream. So thanks for joining us. Again, thanks to Rupert for closing the stream when he thought I was gone. That's very kind of him. Thank you to Lady Schlott, Rupert August, Don the Pleb, and Adam, of course, and also Mitch for joining the stream. And the last tune I played was from Patriotic Archive, and it was an excellent version of the Royal Navy March, basically. So yeah, we'll see you next time. I am now going to go and talk to my woman, which is going to make me entirely miserable because, you know, all of you guys have spoken to women. You know what happens. And I'm joking, by the way, to that one who's in the chat. So I'll see you later, guys. Go off and never let the bastards grind you down.